All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So in my prior videos, I reviewed conditional statements, if, else, and switch. Um, and conditional statements kind of control the flow of code as it's being executed. So I also wanted to introduce control flow, which is actually managed by loops. So there's two loops, while and for loops, and they have their own different little flavors, which we'll cover. But this video is going to be mainly about while loops. So a while loop evaluates a condition before it actually steps into the loop and continues through it. So there is a possibility that with while loops that it won't ever execute if the condition isn't met. So it's kind of like an if-else statement where you have a condition, same thing. So the while loop will continue to perform a condition until the condition becomes false. And it's best to use a while loop if you know the number of iterations you need to do before it actually begins. So let's go ahead and play around with while loops. So I'm going to start with just a really simple, very simple while loop so that we can get our feedback. So I'm going to have var I equal 0, and then so I is going to kind of be part of our condition. So our next one is going to be, what was I say, my first int. This is just easy. And then we're going to equal that to 0. And then we'll create a while loop. So we type while, and then we add our condition. We're going to say we want I to be less than 5. So we want this loop to continue 5 times through. So we want this to be repeated 5 times. So then we're going to head and plus my first int, because we want to add 1 to int. And then we are going to print out what it is. So my first int. Okay. And then we want it to end, because if I don't let it end, you see here, it's just going to calculate into infinity. And that's what it is. It's an infinite loop. I haven't ended the loop. So it will continue to add 1 to my first int forever. So let's go ahead and stop that. So how we do that, we do plus I, so that we control, we actually, end the loop. Because right now, I is equal to 0 forever. So we want to go ahead and add 1 to I so that it only repeats 5 times. And here you see it does, it only repeats 5 times. Okay, so let's do another example, but this time a little bit more fun. And somewhat realistic, not really, but it's going to be realistic for what we want to do. So let's say we have a test that we want to have people have it perform an X number of times. So say we're out on a spaceship, we come across an alien planet, and we want to know if its atmosphere is breathable. So you just don't want to crash land, or land on a planet. You don't know if you can breathe the air, So let's go ahead and do a while loop for the probe, so that when we send that probe out, that it will collect, or go through an X number of tests and send it back to us. And we want to track the receipt of those tests results. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our probe while loop. So so we're going to say, what should we call this? So we want to track how many times it sends data. So we want to track the receipt, right? So var receipt of probe data. I'm going to have this be an integer because you don't want half you don't want half the data, you want all of it, right? So I'm going to equal that to 0 because we haven't sent it out yet. Let's see, I didn't need to do that. Okay. Then we want to say how many tests to perform. So number of tests. So we want a set number of tests to be done, right? Okay, so I'm going to set that to 0. And now let's go ahead and create our while loop. So while number of tests is less than, let's say we want to do this 5 times so that we can, let's say one of the tests fails or another, it only, sends back some weird, information that doesn't apply to anything, and say the other 4 or other 3 actually have some data that we can compare against and, take an average of, whatnot. All right, so we have that. So let's go ahead and count. So we want to add receipt probe data. You see, we have our infinite loop. We gotta end that, right? Plus number of tests, because we wanted to make sure that we have a receipt of data first, right? And then we can say, okay, yeah, we had that test now, right? And then we can print out collected, and let's go ahead and do string interpolation. Let's do receipt of probe, probe data of 5, right? Because we want 5 tests. For, then we're going to say how many tests. So num of tests. So you can kind of see what's going on with the number of tests too. Of alien atmosphere. Okay, so there we go. So it says we collected 1 of 5 tests for 1 probe test of alien atmosphere. I think I should switch that around, but you basically get the idea. As you can see, it's collected 1 for 1, collected 2 for 2. So you can see that each time it's coming back and it's creating a test and sending it back, and we're receiving it back. All right, so that's another example of, it's kind of similar to the above one. But yeah, that's a simple way of using while. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out our next one, which is repeat while. Now, with repeat while, it's a little different than a while statement in that a repeat while will evaluate at least once. We'll evaluate the code inside the while loop 1 time at least. And repeat while is actually really great if you don't know how many times the while statement needs to be executed, but you definitely want it to happen once at the very least. So let's see how that works. Okay, so using our first example, so we'll do repeat. So you see the condition is evaluated first at all, and then our while is at the end. So while I is less than 6. Okay, this is where I want to show you kind of the difference between repeat while and just a plain while statement. So I'm going to use the previous example. I'm going to do print, and then I'll do my string interpolation. And I'm going to do repeat while so you can see the difference. Right, and then we got to make sure we end it because it will continue forever. Okay, so we do I++. Okay, so here we go. So 6 of the repeat while statement, and let's show you what int is. And I is string interpolation I, so you can see what I was. So as you can see, I is 5, right? Which if the while condition was above, this wouldn't even output because I actually would output here. I'll show you here. This is the best way to see it if I put I++ above. So yeah, so I is 6. But coming in though, I was not 6. I was actually 5. So I forgot to put my little quotes. Value of I coming in was, so you can see what it was prior to it actually coming in. It would be 5. So you see the value of I coming in was 5, but then because the condition was evaluated at the top, it will still go through and go, execute the code inside the statement. And then once it hits this while, it won't do it because I is now 6. And 6 isn't less than 6, right? Because we didn't include 6 in our condition. Otherwise, if we included 6, we put less than equal 2, right? Okay, so you can see that I was 5. And if this was a real while statement, this statement would not have continued because up here we can totally see it did not go beyond 5, right? Okay, so that is a repeat while. So let's do an example, repeat while. So say we are, I don't know, on a spaceship. Let's say Star Trek Enterprise. Or say you're playing a video game or you're creating a video game and you want to make sure that your starship can still fire torpedoes at an enemy even if its shields are down, because sometimes it happens. You want to still fire. So let's create some code here. So let's say shields equals 0, and then var ship explodes. Let's hope it not. Hope it doesn't explode. But let's go ahead and set that to false. So if the ship explodes, you can't fire torpedoes, right? Right. So let's do a repeat because we want to make sure that the ship can still fire at least 1 torpedo, even if its shields are 0, right? So you want to be able to add this functionality because, yeah, you want to make sure that the good guys win, right? So, so shields greater than 0. So even though shields up here is set to 0, it will still do this repeat no matter what. So let's add some things. So fire, torpedoes, even if the shields, ship shields are down. So we're going to print fire torpedoes. And then we'll subtract shields. So this will mean it'll be -1, right? And you see that it does fire torpedoes at least once, even though the shields are down. So your people they're fighting to the very end, right? So let's incorporate ship explodes so that we can have some fun. So if ship explodes, actually we want to make sure this is not That's what's going to happen. All right, so what did I do? I said, okay, if if ship explodes is not false, then fire torpedoes. Because if the ship explodes, you can't fire a torpedo, right? Right. So there's no ship to fire a torpedo from. So we want to make sure that, one, the ship actually is in existence before it fires a phantom torpedo, right? So let's say this is true, then it shouldn't output at all, which is absolutely correct. So that's how you incorporate a control flow while, and then I use a conditional inside of it. So that's pretty awesome. So you can really add some complex behavior to code, with if-else statements, while, loops, whatnot. So there you go. That's awesome. Okay, so if you want to continue on to for loops, which will be the last control flow managing loop that I will cover. All right, see you then.